So we have an update on the Andre Drummond situation. He has now been connected to the Lakers. This is coming from Mark Stein. That's a reliable source. And I will expand on this later in the video, but we got to talk like cap stuff and trade stuff for a little bit. My opinion of Drummond, if he ended up on the Lakers, is he would have to buy in, and he would have to be willing to not post up, and if he really just bought into setting screens and diving to the rim and standing in the dunker spot and that sort of stuff, then I think it could be good, but we've been asking Drummond to do that for a while. And also, assuming that Drummond did buy in, who would be the best fit next to AD? Would it be Montrez or Drummond, who are more finishers around the basket? Would it be Gasol, who tries to be more of a floor spacer? That would be interesting. Of course, it would still have to be a buyout because the Lakers are not, or they don't have any money that they'd be willing to trade for Drummond. So the idea of a Drummond buyout, it's still kind of dicey because, the Cavs don't want to stretch him, of course. Now, maybe they could arrange it to where they're paying his money just for this year, similar to what the Nets did with Blake, which was something that I didn't really know you could do after waiving a player, but apparently it's a possibility. And given that we're a little farther into the season now, maybe Drummond would be more willing to leave some money on the table since more of his money has been paid to him by this point. One other thing with a potential buyout is that Drummond would lose his bird rights if he agreed to that with Cleveland, which would then mean he would not be able to be part of a sign-and trade in the offseason. So then he would only be able to sign with a team that has cap space, whereas if they don't agree to a buyout, Cleveland can then sign and trade him to anyone. And maybe Drummond's agents already have an idea of a team who might want him, and they would lose that opportunity unless that team has cap space with a buyout. So we'll see if the Cavs and Drummond can come to an agreement. The trade deadline is, March 25th, I believe, and there were a couple of teams connected to Drummond between the Raptors, which I don't think that one's going to happen. I mean, to find a Drummond move, to me, you just got to find a team that has a contract that is easy to move, that is a guy that they don't feel is essential, and the only team I could really find is Dallas with James Johnson's contract, because it's like $16 million, and they also have some smaller contracts that could get them to the $23 million, I believe it is, to get close enough to trade for Drummond's 28.7. That rule, of course, does not apply when you're dealing with a trade exception, so the Celtics can't really get in the Drummond thing. Although the Celtics can use the exception to acquire someone who makes at least, let's say, 13 or 14 million, and then they could combine that with some of their contracts like Tristan Thompson and get close enough to Drummond's money. Not that I want the Celtics to do that, but the possibility is there. Now, there was also a rumor about the Bulls with Drummond. The move would be Otto Porter's deal for him. I don't think the Bulls should do that one. There was also one about the Knicks. Similarly, I don't think they should want Drummond. The one thing with the Knicks is that because they're under the salary cap, they don't have to get to that $23 million. I think for them it would be like 16 or so it makes it a little easier. But still, I don't think they need Drummond. So we get back to the Lakers, and yeah, if Drummond is willing to leave some money on the table because this season has already gone by a bit and he's gotten paid a bit, then yeah, he could go to the Lakers, and I think the Lakers could use a big guy with some verticality, because one thing that happened was when they lost Dwight and JaVale and they added Marc Gasol, they did lose athleticism. And I think what they were banking on was, one, Anthony Davis not getting hurt, but number two, Gasol's little boost on offense as a shooter and as a passer offsetting the lack of verticality going from Dwight or JaVale to Marc, on top of also Marc still being a smart defensive player and all that. But I mean, when you can't move as fast, you just can't move as fast. So that would be the idea of going for Drummond. Personally, do I think Drummond would have a huge impact on the Lakers? I mean, maybe just because he's teammates with LeBron, it would force him to be on his best behavior every day and not really pouting about not getting the ball enough and I mean, he wouldn't get any post-up opportunities, so it would force him to just embrace screening, and I suppose it's possible he could have a Dwight-esque run with the Lakers where we're always saying, well, only if Drummond didn't care about getting the ball as much and just focused all of his energy all the time on setting screens, diving to the basket, going for rebounds, and hopefully doing a little better job of finishing around the basket and giving 100% effort all the time, that's the big one, then he could be good, man. You know, we said those things with Dwight, and it actually happened on the Lakers, so maybe Drummond would do a similar thing. And it wouldn't be too big of a risk for the Lakers. I mean, if Drummond shows up and he's not good and they can just simply not play him, although it could distract them from going for someone like JaVale, who we know was pretty alright for the Lakers. Like, yeah, he wasn't great, but he could give them minutes, and he definitely did buy into that style of play. I mean, Drummond going 100% is better than JaVale going 100%, but at least you know JaVale is, again, going to buy into his role. And if he did, then there could be some potential for some things. I mean, I think a LeBron-Drummond pick-and-roll could be a little tougher to switch for teams than the LeBron-AD one, because they just put wing players on AD, but in the case of Drummond, he would probably have actual centers defending him, which could allow LeBron to get downhill a little more often. And also Drummond in the dunker spot when AD is posting up could be good, because then if they bring a double on AD, it results in Drummond either open under the basket, or there's only 3 guys on the perimeter instead of 4, so it's tougher for defenders to defend 2 guys at once on the opposite corner in a zone, that sort of thing. Now the next question I have, if Drummond ends up on the Lakers, is what would happen with the rotation between Montrez, Gasol, and now Drummond, along with still trying some AD at center lineups. There's probably a balancing act between all of that. There's a chance that somebody's minutes just gets pushed down to not much eventually. I guess it would just depend on who's playing well and who fits best next to AD. And as for defense, I think you would hope that, again, Drummond is really playing hard on defense. There's been times when he's been above average defensively. And if he wouldn't be too good on defense, then you would at least hope that between LeBron, AD, and Vogel's system that you could make up for it enough. I mean, it's not like JaVale McGee was some great defensive player, but the Lakers did all right with him. I mean, even with AD not playing lately and the Lakers struggling, their defense has still been good. They're like 8th in defense in the last 10 games or so. So we'll see. Again, it depends on, does Drummond want a buyout because he will be losing his bird rights, which would lose the opportunity to be a part of a sign-and-trade in the offseason? Does Cleveland want to do it? Because, I mean, if they've got to stretch out his contract, then I don't think they should do that. Will somebody end up wanting to trade for him? There's definitely some factors in the way, but this report from Mark Stein sort of suggests that if a buyout happens, he's going to the Lakers.